Never argue with someone who stays completely calm while you're emotional. Not because they're right, but because the argument already ended and you're the only one still playing. If you've ever walked away from an argument feeling drained, embarrassed, or like you somehow lost without knowing how, this video is for you. Today we're talking about the one type of person you should never argue with, what psychology says about why they're dangerous in arguments, and what to do instead if you don't want to hand them control. And no, this is not about being toxic. This is about protecting your mental energy and your power. I'm not talking about someone who's calm because they're emotionally mature. I'm talking about the person who stays calm on purpose, the one who never raises their voice, rarely interrupts, lets you talk and talk and talk, and responds with things like, "Interesting, I see," or "Why do you feel that way? Sounds reasonable, right?" That's the trap. Here's the psychology behind it. In any interaction, the person experiencing less emotion has more control. This is called emotional asymmetry. When you're emotional, you explain more. You repeat yourself. You try harder to be understood. You reveal what matters to you. Meanwhile, they stay calm. They don't rush. They don't over-explain. That imbalance alone tilts power in their favor. You think you're debating, they're observing. When you're emotionally activated, your brain shifts into a more reactive mode. That makes it harder to think clearly and easier to say things you normally wouldn't. The calm person doesn't interrupt that. They let it happen. Because every sentence you say gives them your values, your triggers, your fears, and your boundaries. You think you're convincing them. They're collecting data. This isn't a debate, it's information extraction. That's why you feel worse afterward. Have you ever replayed an argument later and thought, "Why did I say all that?" That's not weakness. That's because you were carrying the emotional weight for two people. They stayed neutral. You carried everything. And that imbalance creates regret. Here's another psychology concept. Humans have a deep need to feel seen and understood. So when someone stays quiet and attentive, your brain goes, "Finally, they're listening." So you keep talking. But listening doesn't always mean caring. Sometimes it just means waiting. This is why silence can feel powerful in an argument. It pulls more out of the other person. Now let's talk about the calm why question. Why do you feel that way? Why is this important to you? What made you react like that? On the surface, these sound healthy. But in a heated moment, they shift the spotlight entirely onto you. Now you're not discussing the issue. You're defending your emotions, and the more you explain yourself, the more authority you hand over. At this point, you might be thinking, "So what? I should never argue again?" No. This isn't about avoiding conversations. Not every calm person is dangerous. But not every calm person is safe either. In psychology, whoever controls the frame controls the interaction. If the frame becomes, "Let's analyze your feelings," you are no longer equal participants. You are now the subject. They are the observer. And observers rarely lose. Here are some red flags. You feel emotionally exhausted after talking to them. They reveal very little about themselves. They remember things you said long ago. You talk more than you plan to, and you feel exposed afterward. If that sounds familiar, arguing won't help. So what should you do instead? First, you do not owe emotional access to anyone. Silence is not weakness. Ending a conversation is not losing. Second, when you notice yourself over-explaining, stop. That urge to clarify, justify, or defend is your cue. Third, shift the frame. You can say, "I don't want to unpack this right now," or "Let's talk about something else," or "We see this differently and that's okay." Notice how none of those are arguments. That's intentional. Walking away isn't avoidance. It's a boundary. Avoidance comes from fear. Boundaries come from choice. The person who needs the argument the least controls the outcome. This shows up everywhere. At work, in families, in relationships, online. Some people don't want resolution. They want leverage. And once you understand that, you stop playing games you were never meant to win. So remember this. Never argue with someone who stays calm while you're emotional, asks questions instead of sharing, and leaves you feeling drained afterward. Not because they're evil, but because the structure of the conversation favors them. If this made you rethink a past argument, like and share this with someone who needs it. And if you want more psychology explained in real-life terms, subscribe. Because understanding how interactions really work can save you years of emotional energy. And the next time someone stays perfectly calm while you feel yourself getting emotional, you'll remember this moment. Which means the next argument won't start the same way. And that's exactly why you'll want to listen to this again.